Next up, let's get a little bit more advanced with Flask and see how we can make a web app that's actually a little bit interactive and that gets us to learn some of the core features of Flask and some of the things that we can do with it. We are going to make a web app that is a simple calculator. It's not the most exciting app in the world, I admit that, but it will cover a lot of ground as far as showing you how you can use Flask to implement stuff that is interesting to you or is useful to you. We're going to begin by, again, creating a folder and using that to set up a virtual environment. So new folder, I'm going to call this one Web Calc. And I'm going to open this folder in VS Code. I'm going to create a file in there, and we'll just start off now by calling this app.py, since we know that's the default name for a Flask app. And now that VS Code knows that we're talking about Java here, I need to create that virtual environment. So I'll show you another way to do it. If I go down here and to click that gear in the bottom left and go to the command palette, I can type create environment. It's popping up right away on mine because I use this command every once in a while. But this is the command palette. And a lot of people who like to do things by typing, people who like to work in the command line, for example, you learn that keyboard shortcut. On a Mac, it's Control or Command Shift P, and then you can just type what you're looking for. Python create environment. It is exactly the same as clicking down here and choosing create virtual environment. It's going to let us choose which kind we want. We want a virtual environment, a VENV. I'm going to pick my most recent installation of Python. If it asks me to, when it's done setting this all up, I will say yes, but it needs a moment to create that folder, that .venv folder that is essentially the virtual environment. Looks like I'm ready, and now I can begin with my import statement. So from the package Flask with a lowercase f, import the class Flask with a capital F. We're going to need to import some more stuff as we go along, but I don't want to do it all now. I'd rather make sure you understand what you're getting access to with each of those additions. So we'll talk about those as we go along. It is not recognizing Flask yet because I have not installed the Flask package. So I need to open a terminal and use the pip command, pip install Flask. The whole point of a virtual environment is that it is self-contained. So you may have just installed Flask using the pip command for another project, but that's in a different spot. That was in a different environment. So in this environment, I haven't installed it yet, so it doesn't recognize what that is. I'll go ahead and let that download and install. And then once VS Code has a moment to recognize that that is there, it will now get rid of the little error, and it fixes the color coding, sort of acknowledging that Flask is set up and ready to go. And now we're ready to start creating the app. First up, we'll need to create that app object, which is going to be using that Flask class constructor. And I have to pass in the string dunder name, and so that it's kind of orients Flask. It sort of gives the app a home base, so it knows where to find all the stuff we're going to be working with. And then I'll skip a couple lines, and I'm going to do that if statement that runs it for us automatically whenever we run the Python file. So if dunder name is equal to dunder main, dunder is just double underscore. Sorry about that. If I didn't make that clear before. And then I'm going to call the run method on that app class. And I'm going to go ahead and set the debug argument to true right from the start here, because I'm going to want to run this in debug mode. And now I will run this script. And there we go. I can see that we are running in the debug mode. The last thing we'll do, just to make sure that we're kind of set up correctly, is I will add some routing just to basically a hello again kind of thing to make sure that that everything's working correctly. So I'm going to route the root, the root URL to a function that I'll call home, and it's just going to return. I'll just have it return home page for now. That is temporary code. It's not saved. I can see the little dot up here telling me it's not saved, so I'll save that. It also reformatted it for me. And now I can see in the terminal that it has updated all of that, and I can command click on that URL, and it will take me over to my web browser and load that URL homepage. It looks like we are up and running. Writing our HTML in that little return statement, that's not very practical. We're eventually going to need to, handle some actual HTML pages. So Flask uses a platform called Jinja, Jinja. It's like the word ninja, but it starts with a J, to help us serve that HTML. It can do a lot more than that, and it's a whole separate thing on its own. But for our purposes, we can just think of it as the way we're going to display our HTML pages. Jinja works on the idea of templates. So our HTML pages are dynamic, and they can change as the application is running based on whatever's going on or whatever data it retrieves or what have you. So we need to put all of our HTML pages that are going to be dynamic, we need to put those in a separate folder. And so in my my application folder here, I'm going to create a new folder, and it has to be the right name. It is templates with an S on the end, all in lowercase. And very important that it is not inside that .venv folder. That one is our virtual environment stuff, and we don't need to put it there. It's going to be all by itself right next to app.py. In addition to that folder for our dynamic HTML pages, we are also going to have some static content, things like a CSS file to help us style our pages as we render them. So for that, we're going to need another folder, and this one is going to be called static, static, all in lowercase. And that sets up our folder structure. Inside that templates folder, let's go ahead and make a page, a file called index.html. Okay, we're going to need some basic HTML to work with here, and nothing fancy, and I'll save you from watching me type. I just copied and pasted here, but I've got essentially a doc type, HTML and a closing HTML, a head section with a title, and a body with just basically a heading in there. And I'll save that. So now I've got this HTML file that's in my templates folder, and it does have to be in that templates folder. What we need to do now is modify our app so that it, close that window there, so that instead of running this, sending back this little simple string, that it tells, that it renders that HTML as the result of this routing. So I'm using the word render on purpose because that's the term that Jinja uses. So we're going to need to import render template. Okay, so I've gone to my from statement, my from import statement, and I've added comma render template so I can have that function there. And that's what I'm going to return. I'm going to return render underscore template, and then inside the argument I'm going to pass in quotation marks is index.html. I'll save that. I believe in my terminal we should still, I think I just, let me close those extra terminals. I think I had a couple instances running. Let me run it again. Oh, I'm waiting for that to run. And now I'm active. I can go back over to my web browser and hit refresh. And now I've got Web Calculator, which is the that HTML file that I created. And I can prove that to myself by coming back over here and just making a slight edit. I'll add some paragraph here. Welcome to the amazing web calculator. Save it, come back over here, hit refresh, and so we are confirming that my HTML file is now being sent to the browser when they go to that root URL. Okay, the next thing we'll do is we'll add some basic styling to this. People in this course, you may be web design experts, or maybe you barely know HTML at all. There's a wide range, I'm sure, so I have to just keep it simple. It turns out I follow a pretty basic rule of thumb, and that is it's easy to tell when a front end, like a web page, was designed by a programmer because it looks terrible. Programmers often are not very good at the design aspect. I'm not intending to insult everybody, but you know, I know that for me, I'm better at programming and not as good at the design stuff. So just so you know, what many people will do is they will use what's called a CSS framework or a CSS template. Bootstrap, I think, is kind of the most common one. It's I'll have to get the web address later, but I think it's like getbootstrap.com or .org or something like that. W3 Schools has a good one that they call w3.css. And, you know, I just figure leave it to the experts to do that. In this video, I'm not going to leave it to the experts. I'm going to make a fool of myself by showing you how poor my design skills are. A CSS style page file is going to be static, so it's going to go in this static folder, and we do have to be careful that we're putting it in the correct place. So I will call this style.css, and let me close that again. And once again, I'll save you from watching me type that all out. I will post this CSS in Canvas so you can use it if you want. It literally does not matter how you style this as far as I'm concerned. The idea here is that we just want to show how to use a style sheet, how to put that styling into our template that we render. And I really don't care how it looks. You could also just pause the video and kind of type this in if you wanted to. It really is just basic stuff. But I'm going to go ahead and save that and jump back over to my HTML file. And we're going to go ahead and add that CSS into our file here. So that's going to be up here in the head area, the header. We'll add a link. Style sheet. This is just the your standard. So far, it's just your standard way to link a CSS sheet. Here's where it's going to get interesting: is when we give it a URL for where that file can be found. This is the first place where we start to see some of the power of the rendering engine that Jinja provides. Instead of giving it the file name, I'm going to add double curly braces, right? So curly brace, and then inside of that, I'm going to call a function called URL4. And what I'm saying is that what I want to put in here is the URL for one of the files in my project. And so in the parentheses there, as an argument, I'm going to put static, static, because this is a static page. It's going to be in that static folder. And notice, by the way, that I am using apostrophes here, a single quote, because I've got double quotes for my HTML. So you have to be careful about that. If you put a double quote there, you're going to have all kinds of weird errors. So single quote static, single quote, comma, And now the file name is going to be file name equals, and again, single quote, style.css. Okay, so I'm going to click away from that so you can see it better. It's double curly braces, URL underscore 4, and then in the parentheses we have static with single quotes around it, comma, file name equals single quote style.css. If you have to, pause and get that down correctly. Let's go ahead and save that, see if it actually worked before I get too excited. And I accidentally deleted something there. Oh, I'm missing something, by the way. I left off at the end the trailing angle bracket to close off that link tag. Now I'm going to save it. I'm going to jump back over to my web browser and hit refresh. There we go. I didn't claim that it was going to look nice, but at the very least it shows me that the style is being used correctly. So because I can tell by the colors and the fonts and all that kind of stuff. So back over here. So now we're up and running. We are able to render an HTML file, what Ginger's going to call a template. And within that template, I'm able to use a CSS file that I've put into the static folder. The next thing I want to add to this is a navigation bar at the top, because we're going to have multiple pages in this application. And so I'm going to go into the body here. I'm going to make all kinds of mistakes with my HTML, I'm sure. I apologize for that, but I'm going to start by defining a little header section. All right, this is going to be the portion at the top of the page, and that's where I'll put my nav bar. So I'll use the nav tag. I'm probably also using a mix of like HTML version 4 and HTML5. As I said, I'm not a web developer. So for my navigation bar, I'm just going to use an unordered list, which is a bulleted list, and I'm going to tell it to render that. In my CSS file, I have a line that renders that horizontally, so we'll go back and see that in just a moment. So that's why I'm doing it this way. I'm going to have then an LI tag for each item that's going to be on my navigation bar. So href, these are just your good old-fashioned hyperlinks. And I'm going to put just an empty pound sign in there for the URL, just as a placeholder. My first one's going to be called home. And now I'm going to copy and paste the rest of these. I'm going to have one for home. And then I'm going to have a page for each arithmetic function that this calculator provides. So addition is going to be a page. Subtraction will be a separate page. And then multiplication and division will have pages. Division. I'm going to save that. I'll go take a look at my HTML file here and see how that looks. There we go. So I've got my nav bar at the top. Now, like I said, I used a little bit of CSS to make that look the way it's looking. So if you want to see that, just so you know, I'll open that file, and that's going to be this this nav styling here. So I set the background color of the entire nav section to be, in my case, cornflower blue, just so you could see visually where it was. And then I'm styling those list items by saying that I want the display to be inline. And incidentally, making it inline also removes the little bullet from being displayed. So it gives us that nice kind of horizontal layout. So there are probably much better ways to do this. And again, I apologize for not being much of an HTML person. But that's the way I was able to do this easily. And so that's what we're going to use for now. Incidentally, with all these projects, you are welcome to use all of the HTML and CSS wizardry at your disposal. So don't be limited just because I am limited. All right, so I've got a nav bar for those other pages. What I don't have are the other pages. So we're going to need to come over and create a new HTML file. So I'm going to come over to templates. I'm going to right click and add a new file, and I'll call this one addition.html. So this is going to be the page that people click over to if they want to do some addition calculations with our amazing web calculator. And right away, I'm starting to think about this a little bit and saying, well, okay, I've got this. I mean, I know we don't think it looks very nice, but I do have a look and feel to this website, and I want everything to be consistent. And for example, I want every page to have this this navigation bar at the top. So I really need to have a consistent look. And what's going to be tempting is to say, okay, well, I'm going to copy and paste everything from index and put it into addition and then just modify what I need to do. And that's an example of where we've got the right idea, but the wrong execution. As you hopefully know from previous experiences, copying and pasting is often a bad idea in coding and in programming, because now you've got another place where you have to maintain that code. If you find out later it had an error, you have to fix it in 2 spots or 3 spots or 10 spots, however often you've copied it. Or if your boss comes to you in 2 weeks and says, oh, by the way, you know the way you did that before? We don't want to do that anymore. We want to do it a different way. And now you got to go find all those snippets of code that you copied and pasted and fix them all. So we refer to that as maintainability. When we have duplicate code like that, it is tough to maintain. So in object-oriented programming, we might use inheritance for this. Well, it turns out that the Jinja engine also has inheritance. It has something called template inheritance. So the idea is we can have a base template that essentially establishes the general look of the site, the way each page is going to be laid out and styled and all of that. And then we can have one or more child pages that inherit that layout, but then puts in content that is specific to just that page. So I'm going to start on that before I start copying and pasting things into the addition HTML. I'm going to make a new page for this, and it's going to be called, I'm going to call mine layout. I'm not sure if there's a standard name for these. Base or layout or parent or something like that is probably good. But I'm thinking of this as I'm going to sort of establish the layout of my website. And so what I'm going to do, I am going to copy and paste. Well, I'm actually going to cut and paste. I'm going to take all of the code that I currently have in my index, and I'm going to move that over to my layout. Okay, so I'm just going to cut and paste all of that over to my layout. I'll save that, and now I'm going to jump back over to my index. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some tags up here using the Jinja syntax to tell it that we want to inherit from layout.html. And just like if you're a Java programmer, for example, the keyword to set up inheritance is extends. It's going to be the same here. So curly brace and then a %sign. And then a %sign and curly brace is going to be how we close that tag off. And inside of that, I'm going to say that this page, oops, I put it in the wrong spot. I need to be in between. Extends, and then in quotation marks, the page that I'm extending, the file that I'm extending. So layout.html. All right. So let's see. Maybe I should test this with nothing in here first and sort of see how it looks. Sometimes it's hard to tell when you're making progress. Okay, so now that page is empty. If I go back over and plug that line back in and then refresh, I'm back where I started. It seems like I haven't accomplished much, except I can also go into my addition page and I can paste in just that tiny little piece of code. And I haven't routed to the addition page, so we can't actually test that yet. We'll get there in a moment. But the point is now I've got all of that layout in place, all that sort of boilerplate, if you want to think of it that way. And I only need to maintain it in one spot. I only need to maintain it right here in the layout. So let's go over to the layout page. and get rid of anything that is specific to this page. And so the title is sort of specific. I guess that's a title for the whole site. I actually think I'd like to get rid of that. I want each page to have its own title. And I'm only spacing this out to sort of make it visually a little easier for you to see. But I'm going to do another one of those template tags here. So that's curly brace, percent, curly brace. And I'm going to start a block. So we call these blocks, called title. And I can call it whatever I want, but I'm going to call mine title. And then I'm going to, outside of that, it works a lot like HTML. I need to have a closing tag now that's going to be called end block. Okay, so there doesn't need to be anything in between there. I'm going to delete that in a moment. I just want it to be clear visually that this is one complete tag closed off by curly braces and those percent signs. And this is a separate one. Okay, now I'm going to delete all that excess space. All right, and I'll save that. And let's go back over to index. And so how do I tell it what the title is? What I'm saying here is that whatever we define as the title, that's going to go right in here in between those title tags. So how do I define that? How do I tell it what the title is? I'm going to come over here to my index, and I'm going to use that same tagging syntax, and I'm going to start a block called title. So block title. And then this is going to be, I'll call this one Simple Web Calculator. So that's going to be like the title of my page. And then I'm going to use an end block to close that off. And I'll save that. This is going to be hard to see much because it's all I've changed is the title, but let's go see if that's working. So I'll jump over here and I'll refresh that page. Now, Safari doesn't show the title of this page anywhere unless I add a tab, and now I get the title up at the top there. That's super hard to see, I'm sure, but that's where Safari and many other browsers use that title tag information. So it looks like we're working. Let's jump back over here. Yeah, we've got our title block there, and we've got our header. That's all good. I would say that down here, and I didn't put it in the right place even. I had it in the, well no, I guess that's the right spot. So after the header, I had this content. I would say that's specific to the page. So that's where we're going to stop and define another block here. So curly brace, percent sign, block, and we'll just call this one content. And just to make it visually stand out again, I'm going to put it on a separate line. So this is essentially where all of the content that is specific to that page is going to go. I think as long as we're doing some kind of template stuff, then maybe we'll go ahead and define a footer down here as well. So my footer, I'll just say, let me see if I can remember, a little copyright symbol. We'll make this look fancy. Copyright 2024. This website is not liable for any injuries caused by using the calculator. I just want something at the footer of this page as well. Let me save that, come over here and refresh. There we go. And so I wanted to sort of define where everything between the header and the footer is. That's obviously a waste of time, that little disclaimer down at the bottom. But now I can see that this section between them is going to be where that content block lives. All right. So let's head over to our index and define some content there. So I'm going to define a block, and this is going to be a content block. It's going to be the block called content. And again, I'm not going to, at first, I like to take it one little step at a time. I like to just make sure things are working first. And so I will put an H1 tag, simple web calculator, and then a paragraph tag. Welcome to the amazing web calculator application. Again, just adding some content. So now we're saying that this is what's going to go in the layout right there above between the header and the footer. And I think, am I supposed to, as again, I struggle to remember my HTML specifics here. I think we'll define that as a section. I hope that's correct. You guys can all email me and make fun of my poor HTML skills and correct me. Oops. Let's refresh that. There we go. And so this is all of our content. I think our layout, our template inheritance is now set up correctly. I think we're in a good place to get to make some progress on this. So let's take a look at this addition page that we've created, but we haven't done anything with it. We said that it extends the layout, and then I need to define the title with a title block. And this will be addition calculator. And for our content block, it's block content. Similar kind of thing. I'll put an H1 tag if I can figure out how to type here. Addition calculator. And then I'll put coming soon. Save that. Okay, so let's go try it out. Now, it looks good. I've got my little nav bar up there. If I hit addition, though, nothing happens because we haven't set up our nav bar to actually link to any of our other pages. So that will be next. Now we're back at that idea of maintainability. That navigation bar is at the top of every single page in our site, and the site could have hundreds or even thousands of pages, but I only need to update it in one place. So I'm going back to the layout, and I'm going to find the link to the addition page here. And right now it's just got that placeholder. So I need to delete that, and I'm spacing out some things here again for the sake of the video. I'm going to add the double curly brace notation and that essentially this same idea, this URL for, because what we want to link to is the URL for. And the idea here is we're going to use our routing that we've established in the app. And what do you know? I don't have any routing for that yet. So let's make some. Let's say that app.route/addition is going to route to this addition function, and we will render that that page that we're working on, template addition.html. And I've got a few different things that I'm working on here, so I'd like to finish this up and get it tested as quickly as possible. So URL for addition. Okay, so what it's saying is that it's going to plug in the URL for whatever gets us routed to the right spot to that addition formula. I'm going to now clean up all my spacing there just to make this look a little better visually. Save it, and let's go back and refresh. And now I'll click addition, and there we go, addition. The home link doesn't work, so we'll need to go back over to Visual Studio Code and kind of wire that up. And I'll go ahead and make a new route for that. It's going to go to the same spot. So I'm just going to add this onto the other route. I'll call this home. Oops, /home. So now if we can route to home and get us back to that main page. So the routing is going to work the same way. We're going to use the double curly brace syntax and then URL for home. I think that will get us there. Let's save that. Refresh. Click home. There we go. Click addition. And now we can click back and forth between home and addition, and eventually we can add on those other pages as well. This is probably a good place to stop this video. We still have some work to do, but we've been at it for a while. We've covered a lot of ground. We now know how to use templates and template inheritance to get our page, our application using multiple pages. So we'll stop here, and then we'll resume by looking at how to create a form and how we can start doing calculations with the data we get from a form. As always, reach out if you have any questions.